You ever walk into the wrong place and realize it might be exactly where you were meant to be? The rain hits harder against the glass doors as Lily Carter tightens her grip on the bouquet, her fingers damp, not just from the storm, but from nerves she can't quite explain, the kind that settle deep in your chest when you know you don't belong somewhere this expensive, this polished, this far from your world of early mornings, dirt under your nails, and tips counted down to the last dollar. But the delivery slip says penthouse 38B and rent is due in 3 days, so she pushes forward anyway. Heels clicking too loudly across marble floors that reflect every flaw she tried to smooth over before leaving the shop. Her dress simple, slightly worn, her hair pulled back in a way that almost looks intentional. Almost. The elevator ride feels longer than it should. 38 floors of silence broken only by her own breathing, until the doors slide open to a hallway so quiet it almost feels like a test, and for a second she hesitates, glancing down at the flowers she arranged herself. White lilies and soft eucalyptus, chosen for a message she didn't write but somehow understands. For someone who feels alone in a room full of people, she exhales slowly, lifts her hand, and knocks. The door opens before she can second-guess it, and there he is, tall, composed, dressed like the kind of man who signs deals worth more than she'll see in a lifetime. His eyes sharp, unreadable, scanning her in a way that makes her instantly aware of everything she is not. She forces a smile anyway. Because that's what you do. You smile. You deliver. You leave. Delivery for 38B, she says, stepping forward before he can speak, before she can notice the slight flicker of confusion in his eyes. I just need a signature. But instead of taking the flowers, he studies them. Then her, like he's trying to place a memory he doesn't have. Who are they for? He asks quietly, and something about his voice, low, distant, makes her chest tighten. Well, it's a surprise, she laughs nervously, checking the card, but I can read it if you want. He doesn't stop her, doesn't correct her, just steps aside, silently letting her in, and that alone should have been her first warning. But she's already crossing the threshold, already stepping into a space that feels too big, too empty, too quiet for someone who supposedly is everything. She clears her throat, opens the card, and reads, "For someone who feels alone in a room full of people. I hope these remind you that you're not." Her voice softens without meaning to, and when she looks up, she sees it, just for a second, something breaking through the calm surface of his expression, something real, something lonely. And instead of stopping her, instead of saying she has the wrong place, Ethan Blake, a man who built his entire life on control, does something he hasn't done in years. He stays quiet and lets the mistake happen. The door closes softly behind her, and the sound echoes in the vast, polished space, making Lily Carter suddenly aware of how out of place her damp shoes and trembling hands must seem against the quiet perfection of the penthouse. But she pushes the feeling down, stepping carefully across the floor as she sets the bouquet on a sleek marble counter. The scent of lilies rising gently into the air like something alive, something warm in a place that feels untouched. They are fresh, she says, more to fill the silence than anything else, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I picked them this morning, around 6, right before the rain started. She glances at him, expecting impatience, maybe annoyance, but instead he is still watching her. Not the flowers, not the card, just her, like she is something unfamiliar, something he cannot quite figure out, and it makes her laugh nervously. I know, I talk too much when I am nervous, she adds quickly, reaching for her receipt pad. If you could just sign here, I will be out of your way. But he does not move. His gaze shifts slowly to the bouquet, then back to her, and for a moment it feels like the room itself is waiting for him to decide something. Who sent them? He asks again, quieter this time, and she hesitates, glancing down at the card. It does not say a name, she admits, her voice softening. Just the message. She pauses, then adds gently. It feels like whoever sent them wanted you to know that someone sees you. The words hang in the air longer than she expects, and something about the way he exhales, almost imperceptibly, makes her chest tighten, like she just stepped into something deeper than a simple delivery. People do not usually send flowers like this unless it matters, she continues, surprising even herself. Not white lilies. They are not loud. They are not for show. They are quiet, They mean honesty and sometimes hope. She shrugs lightly, suddenly self-conscious. Sorry, that is just how I think about them. But instead of dismissing her, he steps closer, his movements slow, deliberate, stopping just a few feet away, close enough that she can see the faint exhaustion behind his composed expression, the kind that does not come from one bad day, but from too many empty ones stacked together. And you believe that? He asks, his voice almost testing her, and she nods without hesitation. I have to, she says simply. Otherwise it is just flowers. A small silence follows, heavier now, but not uncomfortable, not entirely. And for the first time since she walked in, Lily does not feel like she needs to rush out, like she is being tolerated. Instead, it feels like she has been invited to stay, even if no one has said it out loud. She shifts her weight, glancing around the penthouse again, the floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a city that stretches for miles, alive, busy, loud, yet up here it feels distant, disconnected. It is beautiful, she says quietly, nodding toward the view. But it must get lonely, being this high up all the time. The moment the words leave her mouth, her eyes widen slightly, realizing she might have crossed a line. I am sorry, I did not mean. But he interrupts her, not with anger, not with dismissal, but with something far more unexpected, a faint, almost invisible smile, the kind that does not fully reach his eyes but changes them just enough. You are not wrong, he says. And in that moment, without correcting her, without asking her to leave, Ethan Blake makes a choice he cannot take back. He lets her stay in the story she does not know she walked into. For a moment neither of them moves, the city stretching endlessly behind him, while the quiet between them feels strangely alive. And Lily realizes she is still standing there, still holding the receipt he has not signed, still caught in a moment that does not belong in her usual routine of quick deliveries and polite exits. I should probably go, she says softly, though her feet do not move, and something in her voice sounds almost like she is asking permission. Ethan glances toward the door, then back at her, like he is weighing something he has not had to consider in a long time. Stay a minute, he says finally, the words coming out slower than expected, unfamiliar even to him, and she blinks in surprise, not because the offer is inappropriate, but because it feels unexpected, real. Just tell me more about them, he adds, nodding toward the flowers, and she hesitates, then smiles, the kind of smile that comes from someone who does not often get asked to be heard. Okay, she says, stepping a little closer to the counter, her fingers gently adjusting one of the stems. These are lilies, obviously, but not the kind people usually pick for attention. They are softer, quieter, they mean. You are thinking about someone without needing them to notice. She glances up at him, searching his expression, and the eucalyptus, that is for healing, not in a dramatic way, just slowly, over time. Her voice lowers as she speaks, as if the meaning matters more than the explanation, and Ethan listens, really listens, not to respond, not to evaluate, but because something about the way she talks makes the silence in his life feel less heavy. You talk about them like they are people, he says, almost curious, and she laughs lightly, a small, genuine sound that fills the room in a way nothing else has. Maybe they are, she shrugs. I mean, people forget to say things all the time, so sometimes flowers say it for them. She pauses, then adds quietly, or for themselves. The words linger, and for a second he looks away, toward the glass wall where the city lights begin to flicker on one by one, each window holding a life he has never been part of. And what would you send if it were you? He asks, not looking at her, and she considers the question carefully, like it matters more than it should. Something simple, she says after a moment. Not too perfect, not too expensive, just something honest, something that says, I see you, even when no one else does. When he turns back, there is something different in his eyes now, something less guarded, and it catches her off guard, making her look down quickly, suddenly aware again of where she is, of who he must be, of how temporary this moment is. You still need to sign, she says, holding out the receipt with a small smile, trying to bring things back to normal. But as he takes the pen from her hand, their fingers brush for the briefest second, and neither of them pulls away immediately, not because it means anything yet, but because for a moment, it feels like it could. He signs without looking, his name quick, effortless, a signature practiced 1,000 times, and hands it back. "Thank you," she says, stepping back, the spell beginning to fade. "I hope they mean something," she adds, glancing once more at the flowers before turning toward the door, but just before she reaches it, his voice stops her again. Softer this time, almost careful. "What is your name?" he asks, and she turns, surprised, as if the question matters more than anything else that has been said. "Lily," she replies, "Lily Carter." And he nods slowly, repeating it once under his breath like he is committing it to memory. "Lily." And she leaves without knowing that behind her, standing alone in a penthouse that suddenly feels too quiet again, Ethan Blake is already deciding this will not be the last time he sees her. The elevator doors close behind Lily with a soft click, and for a moment she just stands there, staring at her reflection in the mirrored walls, her cheeks still warm, her heartbeat refusing to settle, as if something inside her knows that what just happened was not ordinary, not just another delivery, not just another polite exchange she would forget by tomorrow morning. She exhales slowly, shaking her head as if to reset herself. "Get it together," she murmurs under her breath, pressing the button for the lobby, because this is her life, not whatever that was upstairs, not a man who looks like he belongs in a magazine, not a penthouse that feels more like a museum than a home. Just her shop, and the long list of orders waiting for her to finish before closing. And yet as the elevator descends, she cannot stop thinking about the way he looked at the flowers, or the way he said her name like it mattered, like it was something worth remembering. Back upstairs, Ethan does not move right away. He stands in the same spot, the silence returning but no longer as empty as before. His eyes drift to the bouquet on the counter, the white lilies now catching the soft glow of the city lights, and without thinking, he walks closer, reaching out to touch one of the petals, careful, almost hesitant, as if it might disappear. He reads the card again, slower this time. For someone who feels alone in a room full of people, the words land differently now, heavier, more personal, and for the first time in a long while, they feel accurate, not because someone sent them, but because someone said them out loud, someone who did not know who he was, someone who had no reason to pretend. He lets out a quiet breath, then turns toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city stretching endlessly below, millions of people moving, connecting, living, while he stands above it all, untouched, unchanged, except, not entirely. His gaze shifts back to the counter, to the receipt she left behind, and there it is, her name, written in neat, careful handwriting, Lily Carter. He repeats it again, softer this time, as if testing how it feels to say it without her there. And something about it lingers, something about her lingers, not just her words, not just her smile, but the way she saw something in him without even trying, without even knowing, and that alone unsettles him more than anything else, because people do not usually see him, not really. They see the title, the wealth, the expectations that come with it, but she saw a room that felt lonely, and she said it without hesitation, without fear, and now the silence feels different, not heavier, but incomplete, like something is missing, something that was there just minutes ago. His phone vibrates on the counter, breaking the moment, a message from his assistant reminding him of a meeting he is already late for, another decision, another contract, another room full of people who will say exactly what they think he wants to hear. He glances at it, then back at the flowers, and for the first time, the choice feels obvious. He picks up the phone, types quickly, "Find Lily Carter, the florist," then pauses, his thumb hovering over the screen before adding, "Place an order." He sets the phone down, his expression unreadable again, controlled, composed. But beneath it, something has already shifted, something small but undeniable, because this time, it is not a mistake. This time, he is choosing to see her again. The bell above the shop door rings softly as Lily pushes it open with her shoulder, the scent of fresh flowers wrapping around her like something familiar, something grounding after a day that still does not quite feel real. She sets her empty delivery bag down behind the counter, exhaling as she glances at the clock, just past 6 in the evening. The sky outside fading into a muted gray that mirrors the quiet exhaustion settling into her bones. "You are late," Mrs. Harper calls from the back, her voice calm but observant, and Lily forces a small smile. "Traffic," she replies automatically, though her mind is still somewhere 38 floors above the city, still replaying the way his voice sounded when he said her name. The way the room felt less empty when she was standing in it. She shakes her head slightly, reaching for a pair of pruning shears, focusing on the simple, steady rhythm of trimming stems, arranging petals, doing what she has always done, because that is safe, that is certain. But even as she works, something feels different, like a quiet shift she cannot quite explain. "There is a new order for you," Mrs. Harper adds, stepping out with a small slip of paper, and Lily glances up, surprised. "This late?" she asks, wiping her hands on her apron as she takes it, her eyes scanning the details: custom arrangement, same-day delivery, premium selection. Her brows knit slightly. "Who places an order like this at the last minute?" she murmurs, but Mrs. Harper just shrugs. "Someone who does not want to wait," she says simply, and something about that answer lingers. Longer than it should. Lily looks back down at the order, her fingers tightening slightly around the paper when she sees the address. Penthouse 38B. Her breath catches, just for a second, just enough to make her question it. Maybe it is a coincidence. Maybe the building has more than one client. Maybe she is overthinking something that was just a simple mistake earlier. "Do you want me to take it?" she asks, trying to keep her tone even, and Mrs. Harper studies her for a moment, as if she sees more than Lily intends to show, then nods. "You always take the ones that matter," she replies, and Lily does not argue, because she cannot explain why this one suddenly feels like it does. She moves through the shop with a quiet focus, selecting each stem with care. White roses this time, softer, warmer than lilies, mixed with small sprigs of lavender, her fingers working almost instinctively as she arranges them. But her mind is not on the flowers. It is on the possibility, the question she cannot shake. What if it is him? What if it is not a mistake this time? What if he actually meant for her to come back? She presses her lips together, pushing the thought aside, because that is not how her world works. People like him do not call back. They do not notice twice. They do not remember names written on receipts. And yet when she finishes the arrangement and wraps it carefully, she cannot deny the small, unfamiliar flicker of anticipation in her chest. She grabs her bag, slipping the order inside, and heads for the door again. The evening air cooler now, brushing against her skin as she steps outside, and as she walks toward her car, she glances down at the address one more time. Penthouse 38B. This time, there is no mistake. And somewhere above the city, a man who never waits for anything is already watching the clock, wondering how long it will take for her to arrive. The city lights blur past the windshield as Lily grips the steering wheel a little tighter than usual, her eyes flicking between the road and the glowing address on her phone screen. Penthouse 38B. The same numbers, the same building. But this time there is no confusion, no second guessing, just a quiet certainty that makes her pulse quicken in a way she cannot quite explain. She exhales slowly, trying to steady herself. "It is just another delivery," she whispers, though the words feel thinner now, less convincing than before, because nothing about this feels ordinary anymore. Not after the way he looked at her, not after the way he said her name. When she pulls up to the building, the doorman recognizes her this time, offering a polite nod instead of suspicion, and that alone feels like something has shifted, like the world has quietly adjusted around a moment that should have been forgotten. She steps inside, the warmth of the lobby wrapping around her as she adjusts her grip on the bouquet. White roses and lavender, softer than before, more intentional. The elevator ride feels shorter this time, but heavier, filled with anticipation she does not want to name. And when the doors slide open on the 38th floor, she does not hesitate. She walks straight down the hallway, her footsteps steady, her heart not. She lifts her hand and knocks, and for a split second, there is silence, the kind that stretches just long enough to make her wonder if she imagined everything. If this was just another order placed by someone else. But then the door opens, and there he is again, exactly where she left him, except something in his expression is different, less guarded, more certain, as if he has been expecting her. "You came back," he says, and the words catch her off guard, because they are not framed as a question. They are spoken like a fact, like something he decided would happen. She blinks, then holds out the bouquet, her voice steady despite the sudden rush of awareness. "You placed an order," she replies simply, and for a moment neither of them moves. the air between them charged with something unspoken, something new. He takes the flowers this time, his fingers brushing hers again, but now it lingers a fraction longer, not by accident, not entirely. They are different, he says, glancing down at them, and she nods, stepping inside only when he shifts slightly to let her pass. White roses are softer, she explains, her voice quieter now, more careful. They are not about loneliness, they are about new beginnings, she pauses, then adds gently. And lavender is for calm, for peace, for something that grows. Slowly, she watches him as she speaks, noticing the way his grip tightens slightly around the stems, as if the meaning lands deeper than he expected. So what is this one for? He asks, his eyes lifting to meet hers. And this time the question feels different, more personal, like he is not asking about the flowers, but about what this moment means, and she hesitates, just for a second, before answering. I think it depends on why you ordered it. Her voice soft but steady, and for the first time, Ethan does not deflect, does not hide behind vague answers or distance. He looks at her, really looks at her, and says quietly, I wanted to see you again. The honesty lands between them, simple but undeniable, and Lily feels it, the shift, the line they just crossed without realizing it. Because this is no longer a mistake, this is no longer accidental. This is a choice, and standing there in a penthouse that once felt impossibly distant, she realizes something even more unsettling than before. She is not sure she wants to leave this time. The air shifts the moment the words leave his mouth, not louder, not heavier, just clearer, like something that had been carefully hidden finally stepped into the light, and Lily feels it immediately. The difference between a polite interaction and something that carries intention. She does not look away this time, even though part of her wants to, even though part of her knows this is the exact kind of moment that complicates everything. You ordered flowers just to see me? She asks, her voice softer now, not accusing, not teasing, just trying to understand what this means, what he means. Ethan nods once, slow, deliberate, like he has already made peace with the answer. I did, he says, and there is no hesitation in it, no attempt to soften it or turn it into something casual, and that honesty unsettles her more than anything else, because people do not usually say things like that so easily, not to someone they barely know, not without expecting something in return, but he just stands there, waiting, not pushing, not pulling, just giving her the space to decide what to do with it. She exhales quietly, glancing down at the flowers in his hands, then back at him. That is not something people like you usually do, she admits, the words slipping out before she can stop them, and for a brief second, something flickers in his expression, something sharper, more aware. People like me? He repeats, not defensive, just curious, and she hesitates, realizing she might have said more than she intended. I mean, this place, this building, everything about it. She gestures lightly around them. It is not exactly where someone expects to find someone who orders flowers just to talk. She finishes, choosing her words carefully, but he watches her for a moment, then lets out a quiet breath, the kind that carries more weight than it should. Maybe that is the problem, he says, almost to himself, and she studies him, noticing it again, that subtle crack beneath the surface. The same one she saw when she read the card earlier, the same quiet loneliness that does not belong in a place this full of light. What is? She asks gently, and he looks at her, really looks at her, like he is deciding how much to say, how much to reveal. People expect things, he replies, his voice even but softer now. They expect the version of me that fits this place, this life. He gestures vaguely toward the skyline behind him, not the one that just stands here and listens to someone talk about flowers. There is no bitterness in his tone, just a quiet truth. And for a moment, Lily does not know what to say, because she understands more than she should, more than she expected to. She shifts slightly, crossing her arms loosely, not as a barrier, but as something to hold on to. Maybe they do not expect it, she says slowly. But that does not mean it is not real. Her voice is steady, grounded in something simple, something she believes without needing to prove it. And he holds her gaze for a second longer, something in his expression softening again, like he is not used to hearing that, like no one has said it in a way that felt this honest. The silence that follows is not uncomfortable. Not anymore. It is something else now. Something that feels like the beginning of something neither of them planned. And as Lily glances toward the door, the thought of leaving feels different this time. Heavier, like she would be walking away from more than just a delivery. I should not stay too long, she says quietly, though there is less certainty in her voice now, less urgency, and Ethan nods. But he does not move to open the door, does not create the distance that would make it easier for her to leave. Instead, he sets the flowers down carefully, his fingers lingering on the petals for a moment before he looks back at her. Then do not stay long, he says, and something about the way he says it makes time feel like it just slowed down, like the next few minutes might matter more than they should. And for the first time since she stepped into this place, Lily does not feel like she is in the wrong penthouse. She feels like she is exactly where she was meant to be, even if she cannot yet explain why the quiet stretches between them. Not empty, not awkward, just filled with something neither of them rushes to break. And Lily finds herself stepping a little further into the room without realizing it, her eyes drifting toward the windows where the city glows like 1,000 separate stories happening all at once. Do you ever go down there? She asks softly, nodding toward the streets far below, and Ethan follows her gaze, his expression unreadable for a moment before he answers. Not often. And there is no pride in it, no sense of choice, just a simple truth. She tilts her head slightly, studying him. You should, she says, almost like a suggestion, almost like a challenge. It is loud and messy and nothing goes the way it is supposed to, but it is real. She turns back to him, her voice quieter now. People talk to you without knowing who you are. They do not expect anything. They just are. The words settle between them, and for a second, Ethan does not respond, not because he disagrees, but because he understands exactly what she means, more than he wants to admit. That is not how things work for me, he says finally, his tone calm, but edged with something deeper, something closer to truth than excuse, and Lily nods slowly, as if she expected that answer. Maybe not, she agrees, but that does not mean it cannot. She shrugs lightly, the simplicity of her belief standing in quiet contrast to the complexity of his world, and it catches him off guard again. The way she says things like they are possible, like they are not already decided. He watches her as she walks closer to the glass, her reflection faint against the city lights, small compared to everything around her, but somehow not diminished by it. And for a moment, he wonders what it would feel like to see the world the way she does, not as something to control or manage, but as something to experience. What about you? He asks suddenly, the question catching her mid-thought. She turns slightly. What about me? She echoes, and he gestures toward her, toward the faint traces of dirt still under her nails, the simple clothes that do not belong in a place like this, but somehow do not feel out of place anymore. Why flowers? He asks, and she pauses, the answer not immediate this time. Not casual. She looks down at her hands, then back up at him, her expression softer now, more open, because they do not pretend, she says quietly. They do not try to be anything other than what they are. They grow, they bloom, they fade, and that is it. She smiles faintly. There is something honest about that. The honesty in her voice lingers, and Ethan feels it again, that shift, that quiet pull towards something he does not fully understand but cannot ignore. He steps closer without thinking, closing some of the distance between them. Not enough to be overwhelming, just enough to feel different. And for a moment, neither of them speaks, the silence holding something fragile, something that could easily break if pushed too far. You are not what I expected, he says finally, his voice lower now, more personal, and she lets out a small breath, almost amused. You say that like you had expectations, she replies, and he considers that, then shakes his head slightly. I did. Not, he admits. That might be the problem. She smiles at that, a real smile this time, one that reaches her eyes, and it changes something in the room, makes it feel warmer, less distant, and for a brief second, it feels easy, like they are just two people standing in the same space without everything else attached to it. But then her phone vibrates softly in her pocket, the sound breaking the moment in the smallest but most undeniable way. She glances at it, then back at him, the reality of her world slipping back into place. I really should go, she says again, but this time it sounds more final, more grounded, like she is reminding herself as much as she is telling him, and Ethan nods, though there is a pause before he steps aside, giving her the space she needs to leave, but not without one last look, one that lingers just long enough to say something he does not put into words. And as Lily reaches the door, her hand resting briefly on the handle, she hesitates, just for a second, then turns back. "Next time," she says softly, surprising even herself. "You should come down to the shop." And the invitation hangs there, simple but significant, before she opens the door and steps out, leaving behind a silence that feels very different from the one she first walked into. Because this time, it is not empty. It is waiting. The door closes behind Lily with a soft click, and the quiet that follows feels louder than before, not because it is empty, but because it holds everything that just happened, everything that almost happened. And Ethan stands there for a moment, his hand still resting lightly against the edge of the table, as if the room has not quite caught up with him yet. His eyes drift toward the flowers. Again, the white roses now fully open under the soft glow of the lights, their scent subtle but present, and without thinking, he walks closer, adjusting one of the stems the way he saw her do, careful, deliberate, like he is trying to understand something beyond the surface, something she made look effortless. His phone buzzes again on the counter, another reminder, another meeting, another obligation waiting for him to step back into the version of himself that fits this world. But this time, he does not pick it up right away. Instead, he looks toward the door she just walked through, replaying her last words in his mind. "Next time, you should come down to the shop." And the simplicity of it unsettles him more than anything else she said, because it was not a request, not a question, just an open door, a different kind of invitation, one he is not used to receiving, one that does not come with expectations or conditions. And for a moment, he imagines it, stepping into her world. Instead of keeping her in his, a small shop filled with color and scent and people who do not know his name, who do not care about his title, just a man walking in and being seen for who he is, not what he represents. And the thought lingers longer than it should, long enough to feel possible. Across the city, Lily walks a little slower than usual as she leaves the building, her steps quieter, her mind louder, replaying every word, every glance, every moment that felt just slightly too real to ignore. She exhales as she reaches her car, setting her bag down and resting her hands on the steering wheel without starting the engine, staring out at the city lights as if they might give her an answer she does not have. "What are you doing?" she murmurs to herself, not because she regrets it, but because she knows this is not simple anymore, not just a delivery, not just a conversation that fades by morning, something shifted, something she cannot easily step away from, and that alone should make her more cautious, more careful. But instead, there is a quiet pull, something drawing her back even as she tries to reason her way out of it. She shakes her head lightly, starting the car, telling herself she will not overthink it, that tomorrow will be normal again, orders, customers, routine. But even as she pulls away from the curb, she cannot shake the feeling that normal already changed. Back in the penthouse, Ethan finally picks up his phone, glancing at the missed notifications before typing a short response, canceling the meeting without explanation, something he never does, something that would raise questions if anyone saw it. But right now, none of that matters. He sets the phone down again, turning back toward the flowers, then toward the window, the city still moving below him, unchanged, distant. But for the first time in a long while, it does not feel like something he is above. It feels like something he might actually want to be part of. His gaze softens slightly as he reaches for his jacket, a decision forming before he fully understands it. Not calculated, not strategic, just different. And somewhere across the city, in a small shop filled with flowers that do not pretend to be anything other than what they are, a light is still on, waiting. Even if she does not know it, yet the bell above the shop door rings softly, and Lily looks up automatically, expecting a late customer or a last-minute order, but instead she freezes for just a fraction of a second when she sees him step inside, not in a tailored suit that belongs in a glass tower, but in something simpler, darker, something that almost lets him blend in. Almost, except there is something about him that still stands out, something in the way he carries himself, the way he looks around like he is seeing everything for the first time. "You actually came," she says before she can stop herself, her voice carrying a mix of surprise and something quieter, something closer to disbelief. Ethan pauses, just inside the doorway, taking in the space, the rows of flowers, the soft hum of a refrigerator unit in the corner, the faint scent of earth and petals that feels completely different from the sterile quiet of his penthouse. "You said I should," he replies simply, his eyes settling on her again, and there is a small shift in the way he says it, like this is not something he was supposed to do, but he did it anyway. Lily glances around instinctively, suddenly aware of how small the shop feels. How imperfect, how real. "It is not exactly a penthouse," she says lightly, half joking, half defensive, but he shakes his head almost immediately, stepping further inside. "That is the point," he says, and the honesty in his voice disarms her again. Just like before, Mrs. Harper watches from the back, her eyes narrowing slightly with quiet curiosity, but she does not interrupt. Sensing something unfolding that does not belong to her, Lily moves behind the counter, picking up a stray stem just to have something to do with her hands. "So, what brings you here?" she asks, though the answer feels obvious now, and he does not pretend otherwise. "You," he says, just as direct as before, and she exhales softly, shaking her head a little as if trying to process how easily he says things most people avoid. "You are not very subtle," she murmurs, and he allows a faint smile, one that feels more natural here than it did upstairs. "I am not used to needing to be," he admits, and that answer lingers longer than it should, because it reveals more than he likely intended. Lily studies him for a moment, noticing the way he looks at everything, the flowers, the tools, the small details that most people overlook, like he is trying to understand a world he has never stepped into before. "Well, if you came all this way," she says, her tone shifting slightly, more relaxed now, more like herself, "you might as well learn something." She picks up a bundle of loose stems, holding them out toward him. "Start with these." He hesitates for a second, then takes them, his fingers less certain now, less controlled, and for the first time, he looks slightly out of place, and somehow, that makes him seem more real, more human. "You hold them like this." She steps closer, adjusting his grip gently, her movements careful but natural. "Not too tight, or you will crush them, not too loose, or they fall apart." Her voice softens as she speaks, focused, and he watches her, not just the demonstration, but the way she moves, the way she explains things like they matter, like even something as simple as arranging flowers deserves attention, deserves care. "You make it sound easy," he says quietly, and she smiles, a small, knowing smile. "It is not," she replies. "It just looks that way when you know what you are doing." Their eyes meet for a second longer than necessary, and something passes between them again, something unspoken but undeniable. And in that moment, surrounded by flowers that do not pretend, in a world that does not expect anything from him, Ethan realizes something he has not felt in a long time. He is not performing. He is not managing expectations. He is just here, and for the first time, that feels like enough. The moment stretches as Lily's fingers guide his, adjusting the angle of the stems, and Ethan feels it again. That unfamiliar shift, not just in the room, but somewhere deeper, quieter, like something he has kept locked away is slowly being asked to open without force, without demand. "You are overthinking it," Lily says gently, noticing the tension in his grip, and she steps back just enough to give him space, watching as he tries again. This time looser, less controlled, the stems settling more naturally in his hand. "Like this?" he asks, and there is something almost uncertain in his voice, something that does not belong to the version of him the world knows. She nods, a small smile forming. "Better," she replies. "You just have to trust that it will hold together." The words land heavier than they should, and for a second, neither of them comments on it, but they both feel it, the quiet meaning beneath something so simple. Mrs. Harper clears her throat softly in the background, not interrupting, just reminding the space that the world outside this moment still exists, and Lily glances over briefly before returning her attention to Ethan. "Now, you add something softer," she says, reaching for a small bundle of baby's breath, handing it to him. "Not everything has to stand out, some things are just there to support what matters." He takes it, more careful this time, more aware, and as he adds it to the arrangement, Something about the process slows him down in a way he is not used to, forces him to pay attention, to feel instead of calculate. You do this every day? He asks, glancing up at her, and she nods. Every day, she says. Some days are easier than others. Some days nothing works the way it should. But you keep going until it does. She shrugs lightly, like it is nothing extraordinary. But he hears it differently, sees it differently, because in his world, things are expected to work the first time, to be efficient, precise, controlled. And yet here, there is room for mistakes, for adjustments, for something imperfect to become something meaningful. And if it does not? He asks quietly, and she meets his gaze, her expression steady, grounded. Then you start over, she says simply. And there is no fear in it, no hesitation, just acceptance, and that unsettles him more than anything else she has said, because starting over is not something he allows himself to consider, not in business, not in life, not in anything that matters. The arrangement in his hands is not perfect, not balanced the way it should be, but Lily does not correct him this time. She just watches, letting him find his own way through it. And when he finally looks up again, there is a small shift in his expression, something quieter, something less guarded. It is not very good, he admits, and she tilts her head slightly, studying it, then shakes her head. It is honest, she replies, and that word lands differently than expected, heavier, more personal. He glances back down at the flowers, then back at her. You really believe that matters, he says, not as a question, but as an observation, and she nods without hesitation. It is the only thing that does, she answers, and for a moment, the shop feels smaller, quieter, like the rest of the world has stepped back just enough to let something real take its place. Ethan sets the arrangement down carefully, his fingers lingering for a second before he looks at her again. And there is something in his gaze now that was not there before, something closer to vulnerability, though he does not name it, does not fully understand it yet. You make things simple, he says, and she smiles faintly. They are simple, she replies. People just make them complicated. The words stay with him, settling into a place he has not allowed anyone to reach in a long time. And for the first time since he walked into this shop, Ethan realizes that this is not just about flowers, not just about a mistake that turned into a meeting. This is something else entirely, something that cannot be controlled or predicted, something that asks more from him than he is used to giving. And as he stands there, surrounded by a world that feels so different from his own, he begins to understand that stepping into it might change more than just his routine. It might change him. The shop grows quieter as the evening settles in, the soft hum of the refrigerator blending with the distant sound of cars passing outside. And for a moment, everything feels suspended, like time has slowed just enough for something important to surface. Lily moves around the counter, adjusting a few arrangements that do not need adjusting, her hands busy while her mind lingers on the shift she can feel but cannot quite name. She glances at Ethan, who is still standing near the work table, his attention fixed on the arrangement he just made, not with pride, not with frustration, but with something closer to curiosity, like he is seeing more than just flowers for the first time. You are thinking too hard again, she says softly, breaking the silence. And he looks up, a faint trace of a smile forming. That seems to be a habit, he admits, and she leans lightly against the counter, studying him in a way that feels more open now, less guarded than before. What happens if you do not? She asks, and the question catches him off guard, not because it is complicated, but because it is not, and he does not have an easy answer. He exhales slowly, glancing down at his hands, then back at her. Things fall apart, he says after a moment, his voice steady but quieter now, and she tilts her head slightly, considering that. Or maybe they just change, she replies, her tone gentle but certain, and the simplicity of it lingers. Settling into the space between them, Mrs. Harper moves in the background, turning off one of the overhead lights, a silent signal that the shop is closing, but neither of them seems ready to acknowledge it yet. The moment feels too present, too unfinished. You should come here more often, Lily says suddenly, the words slipping out before she can measure them, and she pauses, as if realizing what she just offered, but she does not take it back. Ethan watches her for a second, something shifting again behind his eyes, something deeper this time. I do not know if I belong here, he admits, not as a deflection, but but as a truth he has carried for a long time. And she shakes her head slightly, stepping closer, her voice soft but steady. That is the thing, she says. You do not have to belong to something to be part of it. The words land with quiet weight, and for a moment, he does not respond, not because he disagrees, but because he is not used to seeing the world that way, not used to being allowed to simply exist somewhere without earning it, without proving anything. The silence stretches again, but it feels different now, less uncertain, more like something settling into place. What about you? He asks after a moment, his gaze steady on hers. Do you ever feel like you do not belong? And she lets out a small breath, a hint of a smile touching her lips. All the time, she admits, her honesty immediate, unfiltered. But I stay anyway, she adds. And there is something in that. Something simple but strong. Something that does not need explanation. And it stays with him, the idea of staying. Even when it does not make sense, even when it feels uncertain. Mrs. Harper clears her throat gently, stepping forward now, her presence calm but firm. We are closing, she says, her eyes flicking between them with quiet understanding, and Lily nods, though her gaze lingers on Ethan for a moment longer, as if neither of them is quite ready to let the night end. He reaches into his pocket, pulling out his wallet, but she shakes her head almost immediately. No, she says softly. This one is not for sale. And the words catch him off guard again, not because of what they mean on the surface, but because of what they suggest underneath, that this, whatever it is not something that can be measured or bought or controlled. He pauses, then slowly nods, slipping the wallet back into his pocket, accepting it in a way he has not accepted many things before. Then I will have to come back, he says quietly, and there is no hesitation in it this time. No distance, just a simple truth, and Lily feels it. The shift, the way something has moved from accidental to intentional, from chance to choice. And as he turns toward the door, stepping back into a world that suddenly feels a little less distant, a little less separate, she watches him go, knowing without needing to say it that this is not the end of something. It is the beginning of something neither of them fully understands, yet the door closes softly behind Ethan, and the quiet that follows feels different now. Not empty, not waiting, but settled, like something has finally found its place. Lily stands there for a moment longer than she needs to, her hand resting lightly against the counter as she watches the space where he just stood, as if part of the moment is still lingering there. You are smiling, Mrs. Harper says gently from behind her, and Lily blinks, surprised, reaching up instinctively as if she can feel it, but she does not deny it this time, does not brush it off like she normally would. Maybe I am, she admits quietly, and there is no embarrassment in it, just a quiet acknowledgement of something she does not fully understand yet. Outside, the night air feels cooler, sharper, as Ethan steps onto the sidewalk, the city moving around him in its usual rhythm. But for the first time in a long time, he does not feel separate from it, does not feel like he is just observing from a distance. He pauses for a moment, glancing back at the small shop, the warm light still glowing through the windows, and something about it holds him there just a second longer than necessary. Not because he has nowhere else to be, but because for once, he is not in a hurry to leave. His phone vibrates again. Another call, another reminder of the world he belongs to. But this time, he silences it without looking, slipping it back into his pocket as he exhales slowly. The decision simple, almost effortless, and that alone surprises him. Back inside, Lily begins to tidy up the last of the arrangements, her movements slower now, more thoughtful, as if each action carries a little more weight than before. She picks up the small arrangement Ethan made, the one that was not perfect, not balanced, but honest, and she studies it for a moment before placing it carefully near the front, not to sell, not to display, just to keep, as if it means something more than it should. You are keeping that? Mrs. Harper asks, her tone curious but knowing, and Lily nods without hesitation. It matters, she replies simply, echoing words she did not realize had settled so deeply. The shop grows quieter as the last light is turned off, the door locked, the night fully settling in, but the feeling lingers, not in the space, but in her. Across the city, Ethan finally starts walking, not toward his building, not toward the quiet penthouse waiting above the skyline, but down the street, into the noise, into the movement, into a world he has spent years avoiding. And as he walks, there is no plan, no destination, just the simple act of being part of something instead of above it. And for the first time, that feels enough. The days that follow do not return to what they were, not entirely. Lily finds herself looking toward the door more often, listening for the bell, not expecting, but hoping, while Ethan finds reasons, small ones at first, then less necessary ones, to pass by the shop, to step inside, to stay a little longer each time, until it no longer feels like something unusual. It feels like something natural, something chosen, and somewhere between the quiet of a penthouse and the warmth of a flower shop, something takes root, not fast, not loud, but steady, honest, like the flowers she always believed in. And one evening, as the sun sets and the shop glows softly against the fading light, Ethan stands at the doorway again, not as someone passing through, not as someone uncertain, but as someone who knows exactly where he wants to be. And this time, when Lily looks up and meets his eyes, there is no hesitation, no question, just a quiet understanding that what started as a mistake was never really a mistake at all. It was the beginning of something real.